beautiful little cat out of one of the cages and just put it right in front, almost nose to nose of the dog. And the cat just put up its paws, like cats do. Okay, I'm just going to finish off the joke. Like cats do. And the vet said, look, it's dead. I said, no, it can't be. So I took the cat to the back side of the dog, almost on its bottom. And the cat again, and the dog was perfectly still. And then turned the dog over on its back and put the cat on its tummy. And still the dog didn't move. And the owner of the dog said, yeah, okay, I admit it now, my dog must be dead. Because my dog never liked cats. So the vet then gave the owner the bill. $1,020. So that's very expensive. Yes, said the vet, it's $20 for the examination and $1,000 for the CAT scan. I apologize. I don't really apologize. But anyway, so that was just filling in time a bit. We should call it filling in time. We never call it killing time because we're monks. We don't kill things. And so we're kind to things. And that's one of the reasons why that during the meditation which I did, I always emphasise the kindness there. The kindness to your own body. And just after a while you really get skilled in being kind to your body, and you find you can be kind to almost anything. That is the interesting part when you give loving kindness. So, like even mechanical things. I love that, just to push the boundaries of what you can do with loving kindness. Because on one occasion, on a Saturday afternoon, I did a blessing just round the corner in Milford Way, I remember now. Just walked over there, not that far, 5 minutes, and gave a blessing in somebody's new house. And as I was walking back, we had our youth group. Is there a youth group meeting on tomorrow evening? Yeah. Be quiet tomorrow, great. It was the forerunner of that. And they'd already done their class, and they were just about to go to the beach. It was the summertime, so they were going down to the beach. I don't think to do some meditation, but do what young people do. So anyway, they had the car there, but they couldn't open the boot of the car. And they saw me just walking down Nansen Way, and so they said, oh, here comes Ajahn Brahm. He can use his psychic powers to open up the boot. Ajahn Brahm, can you open up the boot for us? And of course, I never let an opportunity just be passed. And I said, yes, I'll open up the boot on one condition. The person who asked me, as long as you agree to become a bhikkhuni and ordain as a nun. And that was Ronnie. Ronnie she does a lot of work over at Jhana Grove, Veronica. And anyway, she said, yeah, okay, yeah, I'll become a bhikkhuni if you can open the door of the boot. It wasn't that hard. I just put the key in and turned the lock, and it opened. And they've been trying that for about an hour, but I could do it very easily. And so afterwards I said, Ronnie, now you have to become a bhikkhuni. And she was scared for a moment, except then one of the people in the youth group was a lawyer. And the lawyer said, yes, she promised she will become a bhikkhuni, but she never said when. So she got away with it on a technicality. It was wonderful, just when you've got some kindness, it's amazing the sorts of stuff which you can do. And it's not psychic powers, it's just the kindness which you have. Of course, one of those great stories, and that was a true story because I did that. The other story was a big story when he was a Thai monk, The Thai monk was going to the United States, and so the monk who received him at the airport in San Francisco had to check his visa, that it was all okay. When he checked this monk's visa, he found that this monk, this was about 10 years ago I think, he had a diplomatic visa with no expiry on it. And this was in the time of Homeland Security. The monk lived in Thailand. And so what are you doing with a diplomatic visa with no expiry to come into the United States whenever you want? It's almost impossible to get. And then he told the story. It was checked up to be absolutely true that about a year before he happened to be just visiting a Thai monastery, Buddhist monastery, in Houston, in Texas. And of course you all know that that's the home of the National Aeronautical and Space Agency, NASA. And they had just installed this really big computer system, multi-million dollars. And once they had it all installed, they couldn't get it to work. Has that ever happened to you when you get a new computer? It's hard to get it to work. That's what happened to NASA. So every day it was down, they were losing millions. So they were flying in the top experts from North America at a moment's notice, please come, and they're paying them a fortune. But no one was able to fix this computer. Until one of the Thai engineers working at NASA said, well, if we can't fix it, perhaps it's something supernatural. Apparently that's what he said. He said, and I know the very person who can fix it. The nice things about this proposition was that monks, Buddhists, we're very cheap. So if it doesn't go right, it doesn't cost them anything. Maybe a cup of tea, that's all you give us. We're very happy to help out. So they brought this monk in, got him all clearance to go into the main computer lab. And he sat down there and meditated, did a little bit of chanting, his loving kindness. And after he'd finished, it worked perfectly. It was weird, but it was true. And they said, in gratitude, they got this monk a diplomatic visa for the rest of his life. Some people say that was just selfishness, so they could get him back at a moment's notice if things went wrong. But there was also a lot of gratitude as well. And that was actually proof. There's a lot of things like that sometimes you wonder what's going on. But you see it so often, it's just the kindness helps and fixes things. So if it can fix a computer, then it can open up a boot of a car. Can't it help so many other things in your life? Now I say this because I was a theoretical physicist before. I'm supposed to be like a hard-nosed scientist. But the point is that in that part of science, you really look deep into the nature of the world and how it works, and you can't exclude the human being. And when you actually see how the mind works, of course it becomes quite obvious that this is possible. It's not just trying to get something out of this, it's just a way of giving. And a lot of times, even little things, you all know that when I was a young monk, that here in Perth, we didn't have much money, so I did all the building mostly. And then later on, I trained Ajahn Brahm, who was a very good builder. But were you there, Ajahn Brahm, when sometimes we had our cement mixer, and sometimes the cement mixer wouldn't work? So I got it to work. Every time I wanted to get it to work, I just pulled the string and it worked first time. No one else could do that. It wasn't the fact that, the cement mixer and me were friends. Maybe it was, because that idea, that kindness, is amazing what it can do to actually heal and help and make things work. So seeing that many times, you understand just the nature of the interaction between the mind and things. and not just the mind and things. That why don't more people actually get into this? I think one of the reasons why is we could just get sidetracked with things like politics, about the election this week or something, and money and houses and stuff. And sometimes as a monk, sometimes you see where I live, just in a cave, very small. Sometimes, why are people so concerned about these things in life? When you have an election, are you just going to vote for somebody who's promising the most? Or are you going to vote for someone who inspires you? Who wants actually to get people to live in peace and harmony together, respect one another? Isn't that more important than being able to pay bills? Wouldn't it be wonderful if you can't pay the bill this week, you tell, oh, I'll pay it next week, and people actually forgive you? And you're not trying to cheat anybody, you really do want to do that. There are times when it's difficult, but we're a family. The big human family, no matter what country we're from. And why do people exploit one another? Just bomb a city, for what reason? They want to have power and take it over. Who wants to take over a city? If anybody feels they want to take over a city, please come and take over our Buddhist society. You're welcome to it. It's really a lot of responsibility and hard work. It's much better just being in the lower. Isn't that the case, Vice President? Kaseda is our Vice President. It's very hard sometimes. I shouldn't really talk like this because a lot of times we're always trying to get people to join our Buddhist society, but not many people want to. Or to join our committee, rather. You want to join the Buddhist society because it's a nice thing to support, or even like being the head monk. As I said earlier, you got a bit afraid when I said when I'm dead I'll still teach.
That's a good idea, actually.
Yeah. Please come back. Forever. Now, sometimes that in the right attitude, we change our attitude. It's not out of any ego, because if you want to have some nice meditation, spiritual life, that's one of the things which we have to overcome. Ego, she-go, we all go. Okay. But no, that type of idea of a self, it never ever works. You know that many years ago, when I started giving really big talks, it's weird, I'm just a monk, honestly. Ajahn Brahm and Venerable Vipassako know me. That's all I love to be, just a monk and do some service and not own very much. But nevertheless, it came a time in Singapore when I gave my first really big talk, about 3,000 or 4,000 people. And that's a big gig. I remember just talking to our president at the time, I think it was Sol, and he had a little band he was playing in. He said, 3,000 or 4,000 people. I'm lucky if I get about 30 people listening to my music. So 3,000 or 4,000 is a huge amount of people. And they'd come in the evening, they'd all had busy jobs, just to hear me give a talk. And I thought, my goodness, that's going to be very dangerous. If I give a good talk, will I get proud and arrogant? And then I solved that problem by realizing I wasn't going to give the talk. Everything I said was what I was conditioned to by my teachers, everything I'd read. My reason I tell bad jokes is because of my father always told bad jokes. And many of the stories came from Ajahn Chah or from the Buddha. I was just repeating, just what I'd heard. I didn't own the talk, I just gave the talk. It was an act of kindness and generosity from me, not asking anything back in return. And because of that, the talk was very peaceful. It wasn't my talk, even though I gave it to 3,000 or 4,000 people. And that's what I mean, that when you don't own things, you just share things. And you don't get anything back except just a smile and happiness and joy. So little by little that became the way when I tried to teach other people to give talks. You're not giving it. It's just your understanding, your knowledge is being shared with others. And you never ask anything in return. when you come to this place. I still remember just before, about 15 minutes before I was going to give a talk in here, somebody called up. There's many stories like this. I told one of those stories, I think, last week. One of the people called and they said, "How much do we have to pay to get in here on a Friday night?" I said, "You don't have to pay anything." He said, "You don't understand. Dollars, cents. How much do I have to cough up to get through the door?" I said, "You don't have to cough up anything. We don't take your names. We don't sort of make sure that all the people who pay a lot sit in the best seats. No, you just sit anywhere. It doesn't matter who you are. You're very welcome." And then what they said next really moved me. They said, "Well, what do you get out of this yet then? What do you get out of giving a talk every Friday? And tomorrow just flying over to Melbourne to give talks over there? Or Ajahn Brahm just come back from Singapore giving talks over there. What do we get out of this? We don't get any benefits at all except happiness." And that's actually what I answered her. What we get out of this is happiness and joy. And my goodness, that is so true. When you do giving, you get so much joy back and happiness, and that's what we do. And giving isn't, we're not asking for money or anything. It's just helping clean up afterwards, helping somebody just open the door so they can get out, just cleaning up the dishes afterwards. Just that idea of giving and serving is a beautiful way of living, and you get so much happiness out of it. One of the problems in our modern age, so people tell me, is a lot of mental health issues now. And one of the reasons we have mental health issues, in my opinion, maybe it's one thing worth considering, is that we always want things from people. We don't give enough. Give enough forgiveness to others. How many times you made a mistake this week? This day, this hour. But we always make mistakes, and instead of forgiving it, we want to sue somebody for it. Wouldn't it be wonderful if there was a mistake made and we said, "Okay, it doesn't matter, you made a mistake, just don't do it again." Learn from it rather than be afraid of it. Because every time that people do make mistakes, you're criticised and people think they're not good enough, that they're failures in life. Because they think they're failures in life, that's where the mental health issues begin. That somehow or another you're not good enough. When you were born, they left out a few important parts from you. It's like a bad car, you have to take it back to the makers and get it all refunded. Instead of doing that, it's amazing what we can do when, if there's something wrong, we just fix it. That's good enough. It's one of the things which I always remembered is when I was giving a retreat over in Penang many years ago. It's really hot in the room I was staying, and I was not used to the heat in that part of the world. I always used to stay. There was 3 seasons in Thailand. And this was Penang. It was in northern Malaysia, close to Thailand. But there was 3 seasons over there. And the 3 seasons were the hot season, the very hot season, and the hot and wet season. It was all hot. And so the aircon was just so nice to have, but then it busted. Now, what happens if an aircon busts here? Actually, one of the aircons in Bodhinyana Monastery bust because it's been quite cold and the mice went into it. When they went into it, they ate the cables, electric wires, and so it doesn't work anymore. We had another aircon in our retreat centre, and that bust too some years ago. We couldn't figure out why, but what actually had happened is a cockroach had got in there and electrocuted itself. It was a suicidal cockroach. But anyway, when the electrician came and found it, he took photographs of it, and it was Leha, she's gone back now, she managed to get an insurance back on it. And the insurance company said it's the first time ever we paid out on the fact that the aircon was busted by a cockroach. And the poor cockroach had died, and no one could trace its family, so no one could actually recover the money from the insurance company. But anyway, that when things bust, why is it we always want to actually blame somebody? It's part of life. Things bust. Or, you have a car crash. And how many times is that car crash caused because, you were not mindful? You were not mindful many times of the day. So it's not like a personal failing. And I don't like the idea that people get punished because of what is actually natural, even like personal failings. And sometimes I've noticed when we've gone to places like prisons to talk to people in jail, sometimes what they've done only a small error, many of the times because of drugs. And when they come out afterwards, or actually when they're inside a jail, they feel that somehow or other they're different, they're not good enough. And they have to have a long time trying to have people like myself or the other monks who go there. One of the monks will be visiting Carnet Prison Farm this evening. That's true, isn't it? Yeah. So just talking to some of the prisoners there, they love having a monk around. They meditate really well. Really good people. They just made one mistake in life, or maybe two. And that's why they go to jail. Remember that story I used to say about the 2 bad bricks in a wall? We want to destroy the wall because we made 2 bad bricks. I laid that wall over in Serpentine, the 2 bad bricks. But people told me over in Carnet Prison Farm there was one person there really loved that story, changed their whole life. They made a couple of mistakes and made them go into jail. The thing was, they were saying those 2 mistakes they made, they'd actually murdered 2 people. But they said it was only 2 bad bricks. They actually said that. Fair enough, just it was a bad thing they did and they spent time in jail, but they're not a murderer. They're a human being who's made big mistakes. But so they don't criticize themselves too much. They'd made a mistake, they learn the consequences, and never do it again. So they're free. Even the idea of freedom. In prison, are you free? Or do you have to wait until you're released? How many people here are free? Sometimes that we just put ourselves in the prison of our past. All those terrible things which you've done. Were they really terrible? Or were they just things which we did because we were stupid, we didn't know any better at the time? I was telling people over in Singapore, there was one occasion when I was, just before I came over here I went over to Thailand to become a monk. I almost never got to Thailand because of this. I was on a motorbike. I drove a motorbike when I was young. If you can imagine that. Big bushy hair and a beard. And driving a motorbike and going down Notting Hill. And I was keeping the speed limit, but it was wet and there must have been some oil on the road because somebody walked out on a pedestrian crossing. The car in front of me slammed on the brakes. And then I was behind the car. I slammed on my brakes too. But I went into a skid. There must have been some sort of oil on the road or something. It was an incline down Notting Hill. But I wasn't speeding at all. And as I was skidding, I was going right towards the back of the car. And I was slammed into the back of the car and having to go to hospital. Then I made a choice, a fraction of a second choice. I could swerve around the car, but then that would maybe hit the pedestrian, who I couldn't see on the crossing. There was that split-second choice. And I made the choice, and my choice was actually to swerve around the car and hope for the best. The motorbike was out of control. Fortunately, I missed the pedestrian. And that was afterwards when I parked, I was sweating. I was so close to either really severely injuring myself or just maybe having to go to jail for injuring a pedestrian. So it's just a split-second choice. And sometimes you wonder, just in life, I was lucky. not injured, and could actually become a monk. How often is it those just minimum choices can change one's whole life? And I always remember that, because whenever I went into the jails to teach people, I remember that there's not much difference there. Some people were lucky, some people aren't. So you can't judge that easily. And so after a while, that you look at, all the places you can go to, give a lot of forgiveness and kindness, and whatever you give, that is how you pay back, if you like, any sort of bad things you've ever done. Instead of putting a person in jail, give people a chance to do something. Still remember one of my people had always come to see me while he was in jail, and he was one of the people I met afterwards when I was at the airport waiting for somebody. He came and put his hand on my shoulders. His name was Nick. He was Greek. Okay, Nick the Greek. But he was. But anyway, he was dressed in a nice suit. He said, "I'm doing really well now. Thank you for all you taught me while I was in jail." He was dressed in a nice suit. "I'm still meditating every day," he said. He was a drug dealer. That's why he got caught and sent to jail. But one of the things which really changed his life, and I always thank whoever was the principal of, I can say it now because it's quite a few years ago, of Jarradale Primary School at the time. Because she wanted to make sure that her children were protected as much as possible from the dangers of drugs. And so that usually you would get some policeman or some psychologist or some expert from the education department in Perth to give the kids a talk about what drugs are and how dangerous they are. But this lady, instead, she got 2 prisoners from Carnet Prison Farm who were serving a sentence for drug dealing to go into the school with young kids and teach them about what drugs really do. And of course, they were just so amazed that this principal would trust them enough and also be willing to put her career on the line. But my goodness, that was such a successful thing she did, because those 2 people that were part of my meditation group who went into that primary school, they knew what they were talking about. It wasn't just a study just done by an intellectual. It was felt in their hearts. They knew what had happened. They knew that what they had to pay for what they had done. And now they could do something to try and heal what they had done in the past. Because I remember they took me, Nick just grabbed me and took me into the schoolroom. And on the schoolroom, on this big notice board, were all these little cards from the kids. You know what it's like if you go and visit a primary school, and the children afterwards, they write all these thank you letters. And these thank you letters, there were 100 of them, and they're all, "Dear Nick, when you get out, please come and see us. Dear Nick, thank you so much for what you did. I hope your sentence gets commuted or something." And as Nick was showing me all of these, he was weeping, not crying, but weeping. Water was streaming out of his eyes. He'd actually done something good to pay back some of what he thought was a debt to society. He wasn't negative while he was in jail, he just wanted to do something good for others. I always remember that, and I always say thank that principal of Jarradale School for actually having the guts to invite an expert, somebody who'd actually done that and knew exactly why and what happens. And of course you can see that from those letters and cards from those kids, how amazing that was. So little by little we understand just how any mental health issues which encourage people to take these non-medicinal drugs and just cause a lot of problems in our society, how they can be quite easily overcome through some trust. Please don't get the experts from the universities. Get the people on the ground who've really been hurt by all of that. They're the ones who understand exactly what's going on and why. But as we meditate, I always keep on saying little by little. I've been noticing that my mindfulness. How many times do I say little by little in my talks? But anyway, please understand that's because Theravada is called a small vehicle, little by little. And I still remember giving a talk in Singapore, and the Prime Minister's wife was there, Mrs. Goh, and I told her that we're from the little vehicle and it's much better than the big vehicle because it's easier to find parking. She thought that was a joke, and it was a joke. But anyway, that as we do our meditation, we understand just what mental health is and how to overcome it. Just being here and being friendly to everybody, that gives people a huge boost that you belong, you're welcome, and you're not excluded. I don't know how many people feel there's something wrong with them. There's nothing wrong with any of you. It's just sometimes we don't see things in a proper way. Here we go, the old story of the forest. I live in a forest, all my life in a forest or in a cave. So, you see the trees in the forest. There's no tree which is perfect in a forest. They're all bent, crooked and twisted. I remember saying that in the mental health conference. Say all trees are bent, crooked and twisted. And so if you're bent, crooked and twisted, if you're damaged, how many people have been told you're damaged goods? Or you thought you're damaged goods? If you think you are, number one, you belong. You belong in the forest. Have a look in all the other trees there, they're all twisted and bent. And if you've really been damaged, you're really twisted and bent, more than others, then you are the most beautiful tree in the forest. I mean that because every time I've gone into a forest, I've always looked for the twisted and bent trees with damage on the bark. They're the best. It's like, I don't know what you might call it, they're more beautiful. Straight, with all the leaves in the right place, that's quite boring. It's almost like unnatural. Every person we've ever had on our committee have always been imperfect. That's why they're valued. Every monk I've ever ordained, and I've ordained all these two and many others, they've always been imperfect. And so why did I ordain that one? Because they're imperfect. Because they're imperfect, they're lovable, and they're human. They're not some sort of robot. And this is one of the reasons why, if ever you feel that there's something wrong with you, please know you're welcome. You belong. Just that amount of acceptance, loving kindness, the door of my heart is open to you. Just that amount of acceptance overcomes a lot of the mental health problems. I don't know why it is that in our lives it's just maybe your parents were just too busy, or they too were rejected and had a difficult time. And because of that you've got the message that you're not good enough, that you're rejected. But quite frankly, every monk, novice in monastery in Bodhinyana, there's lots of them now. Sometimes that people think, oh, they're really lazy monks, or they're this monk or that monk, but I don't know. Honestly, Ajahn Brahm, I love them all. I don't really mean that. You come back from overseas and you just see them and they're very welcome that they're there. Sometimes they drive you crazy. But have you ever been in a family where you got one member of the family drives you crazy, but you wouldn't live without them? So little by little we change our attitude to these things. And when people in the family feel accepted, then the problem starts to disappear. Even then when people say with schizophrenia, feel they're welcomed, they're accepted. then their whole attitude changes. Instead of thinking there's something wrong with them. Too many people feel that there's something wrong with them and try and fix it up. But instead of fixing up problems, instead of curing things, we always care for things. We always say the 3 most important things to do. Now is the most important time. The one you're with is the most important person in the whole world. And the most important thing to do is not to cure people, but to care for them. That's my job. I can't cure the monks in my monastery, I can't cure anybody. As a doctor, any cure is only temporary, and eventually they die. You can't cure even the trees with dieback in the monastery. We just care for them. And little by little, after a while, all those trees in the forest, they will die, like all the human beings will die. New ones will come in. But we care as much as we can while they're there. And that means that we have a beautiful relationship with the forest. We don't try and even cure the kangaroos for going in the wrong places or whatever. We just care for them as best we can. And the parrots, so many parrots appear at Bodhinyana Monastery at lunchtime, and our job is just to care for them. Never to cure them, cure their bad behavior. And we enjoy them. It's just so amazing to watch the parrots at Bodhinyana Monastery when they take a bathe. They're just so ungainly when they go into this little, what actually is it? That little tray of water. Yeah, that one, yeah. It's now become a bird bath. The birds are taking it over. Because there's so much fun and happiness when they go in there, and they look so ungainly. I'm sure if they could actually see what they look like, they would get very embarrassed if they had embarrassment. But nevertheless, it's so beautiful to see them. And they know they're accepted. They know they're welcome, which means they don't have fear. Which means we can enjoy their company, they can enjoy our company. And that's just that's one of the warmth in the monastery. That's why each one of you here, you're welcome. Thank you for coming, and hopefully you feel cared for. We're never going to try and cure you here, no matter who you are, no matter how you behave. We will care for you. And that caring is actually what makes you get better as a human being. Have you ever gone to a doctor or to a therapist and you feel that you always have to get better? I told this story just again earlier together with the dog story and the CAT scan. And this was a true story of one of my friends from South Africa. Oh no, he actually went to live in South Africa eventually. But this friend, he was originally from Tennessee. And he was a professional wrestler. And he's also really smart. So he got a Rhodes Scholarship to study at Oxford. He's an incredibly smart guy. But he got so interested in Buddhism, he went to Thailand and became a monk. He's only a few years younger than me. But when he was in Thailand was quite a rough place, the northeast of Thailand. He got 2 strains of typhoid at the same time. Having one is enough to kill you. He had 2. And of course, the doctors over there were few and far between, and so we didn't notice it until it was really late. And once a doctor came up and saw him, he said, "Get him to Bangkok immediately." They didn't have any flying doctors like we have in Australia. All we could do was get him on the overnight train, got him a first-class ticket, that's the best we could do. And the doctor had arranged an ambulance to be on the platform at Hualongpong station, which, that's not an easy thing to do. But the doctor told me, I knew the doctor really well, and I spoke Thai perfectly in those days. And the doctor told me that as soon as he saw this monk in Bangkok at the station, said he's not going to make it to the hospital. He's going to die on the way. He was that close to death. But he managed to get him to the station. He had enough resilience, maybe because he was a professional boxer before, that he was alive when they got him to the hospital. They kept him alive, but he never really recovered. He was a monk. We sent him to our monastery in England, thinking that somehow or other we'd get better treatment there. But for 2 or 3 years, it was in this attic room, and he could always in bed maybe get up one day, get to the door and just lose all his energy and have to crawl back into bed again. He was really sick. And eventually, what happened after 2 or 3, I went to see him once and it was hopeless. You felt, I knew him when he was just a young monk and just so fit and healthy. But when I went to see him, he was just and only a fraction of what I knew him as before. But anyway, the most important part of that story was when the head monk of that monastery went up to see him and said to him, I've come up here on behalf of all the monks and nuns in this monastery, all the lay people, even on behalf of your family back in the United States, on behalf of all of them, I've come up here to give you permission to die. Don't try so hard to get better. If you need to die, that's fine. And apparently this monk just burst out crying, weeping. And that was the moment when he started to get better. And I don't know how many years ago that was. That was Kittisara. And it must be about 30 years ago now. He's still alive over in South Africa. He did eventually disrobe, but he's started teaching meditation in South Africa. And it's just amazing, just as soon as he didn't have that extra stress that you have to get better, then he got better. That's what happens when you're sick. You try so hard to please other people, to improve and to cure yourself. That's what kills you. So that's one of the reasons why, instead of trying to be cured, care for one another. You know you're welcome, whatever happens, either you die or you live, that's not important. But as long as you're cared for. And then we have a very harmonious, peaceful and healthy community. Instead of having all these problems with mental health, because everyone in that profession feels so much pressure you have to cure others. And get rid of that sort of whatever people don't like to see, whether it's schizophrenia or ADHD or whatever else it is people have got. Allow it to be. Care for it, but don't try and cure it. It's a much healthier way to live. And you'll find there'll be less mental health problems in our society. And less aggression in our society. Always trying hard to win a war which we can never win. And the more peace. I'm not talking about real wars with soldiers and things. Wars against things which don't really need to be fought. So anyway, that's a little talk this evening on care rather than curing and mental disease or whatever. And just the way that we don't deal with these things properly. I'm not quite sure exactly how you're going to title that talk because I just waffled all the way through. But I enjoyed it and I hope you did as well. Thank you for listening. So usually now we have question time. So if anything I said which was wrong or which you didn't understand, whatever, please let me know. Okay, we do have questions online, maybe? Maybe. So anyway, very good. Thank you all for coming who've come. Oh yes, Prem, we've got some, yeah.
Yes. Forgiving. Forgiving is a way of giving, do you agree?
Yeah, it's a way of giving, yes.
Yes.
Very good, excellent. So it's better than double giving. It's forgiving.
Yes, sure.
Okay.
Thank you, Ajahn.
That was it, okay. Yeah, no, it is true. I don't know why we can't forgive one another. You know, one of the things which I do is give marriage blessings. And only once I've done it, once I've done a celebrity wedding. It was put in, I think it was, I don't know if it was Vogue magazine or something, in Malaysia. It was this lady who had her own TV show. It was really popular. And she invited me. I just happened to be in the town of Malacca doing a meditation retreat, and that's where she was doing her wedding ceremony. It worked out just perfectly. I could actually go to the wedding ceremony and give a blessing for her. But I remember reading in the article afterwards, the one thing which I said which really made, basically saved her wedding, was actually when I said, you and your husband, once a year, privately, I want you to, have a little ceremony, obviously on your anniversary, exchange simple gifts and ask forgiveness of one another. Please, it doesn't matter who does it first, say to your husband, no darling, if there's anything I've done over the past 12 months, by body, by speech or by mind, which has hurt you, or disappointed you, or frustrated you, or things which I did by accident, which also hurt you, or things which I didn't do, which I should have done. Please forgive me. And do that with 100% sincerity, with meaning, because you will have done things which are wrong. And then the other partner do the same. Wife, is there anything which I have done which has hurt you, intentional or unintentional, just by accident? Please forgive me too, and mean it. Because when you live with one another, there will always be times when, you're just fed up or something, you're irritated, and you say things and you regret it afterwards. But people don't have the opportunity or the chance to ask forgiveness. So I want you, once a year on your anniversary, please do a forgiveness ceremony. Remember, she wrote afterwards in an article which got sent to me that was the most important part of the wedding blessing. It kept the two of them together. Because obviously, she was a very, very beautiful woman, her own TV show, very successful in her life. He was one of the producers, I think. And for them to keep together was very difficult. When they made mistakes, they'd always give that forgiveness, and at the least once a year. And they said, thank you for that. When I gave a talk over in Kuala Lumpur once, they got her to be my MC. And she was very happy. She said, yeah, of course I'll be your MC. You helped keep my marriage together. So, that's the least I can do for you. So in this big talk. So it was wonderful to see the power of such forgiveness. Okay, you got in the corner over there, yes?
Yeah. On the theme of giving, do you believe there's a point when we can give too much? And if so, when do you believe we've gotten to that point?
When you give, it's not, you never give too much, it's like to whom you're giving. Remember, you count too, so sometimes you have to give to yourself. Give yourself a bit of peace and freedom and forgiveness. Giving is not always to others. So sometimes you look at yourself and say, look, I'm trying my very best in life, and give yourself a break. Don't be so demanding of yourself. If you make a mistake, please forgive it. Look at yourself in the mirror and you say to yourself, if there's anything I've done by body, speech and mind to me, I give me forgiveness. So it's like, as long as trouble is people sometimes think they don't count. You're in this. The other thing which I always say at relationship, marriages, that once you're married you must never think of yourself, you must never think of your partner, you only think of us. You're in it together. Same in the monastery, it's not about me, it's not about Ajahn Brahm or Venawipasaka or anybody else, it's about us. You change your perception and it's about us. Who do you give to? You give to us and everybody who visits. But you count as well. So when you get what you need, and of course you never feel it's too much. So change your perceptions, you count as well, you're part of this. Anyway, there's a few questions here from overseas. From Flint in MI, that's Mississippi, isn't it? Michigan, the USA. Dear Ajahn Brahm, I heard you mention there being 6 types of intelligent sentience. I would love to hear more. I've been wondering what they are. Intelligent sentience, I think that just means sense bases, I think. Like sight, hearing, smell, taste, touch, and the mind. knowing, which is the best. And that mind stuff, that's the most powerful. I think that's what the question is. I can do a whole talk on that. But again, it's actually what that mind actually is, and just how powerful it is. That's the interesting one. I say how powerful it is because sometimes you can have imagined stuff. That's just pure mind knowing. And sometimes that has an effect. What's that story? I remember seeing this. They touched a guy under hypnosis with a 4-inch nail. The hypnotist said, that 4-inch nail is red hot. When it touched this student, that student screamed in pain. And that I could understand. What I could never understand is seeing a blister come up on that student's skin. The nail was at room temperature. There's no reason that couldn't burn even a baby's skin. But because this guy, student, was hypnotized and believed it was red hot, a burn came up. If you can create a burn just through belief, why can't you eradicate tumors just through belief? A powerful mind. Friend Daniel Grant, half British, half Mexican, currently in the Netherlands. I'm not going to comment. How to have more self-love. Again, it's easy to have more self-love. There's all these little tricks. One of them is every morning you just look in the mirror. People said I should exercise more. I do 10 push-ups every morning. In the mirror. Because then you see yourself making a stupid face in the mirror and begin to laugh every morning. What that does, again, that's a way of self-love, not taking yourself so seriously. And the other thing I do, especially during the COVID time, like I'm a religious leader, okay? And if I just hug anybody, I get into big trouble. They think it's sexual assault. And so a long time I thought, what am I going to do, to get a hug or to give a hug? So I decided, well, why not do it for yourself? So I put my arms out, give myself a really nice, good hug. That's self-love. You actually, through a gesture, which is quite common in our culture, you're showing that you care for yourself. And even during COVID time, there's nothing I can catch which I haven't already got. And I can't sue myself. And the other way of self-love is, again, giving yourself forgiveness. And don't be so hard upon yourself and asking too much of yourself. Self-love doesn't mean you have to be perfect before you can love yourself. It's like opening the door of your heart, no matter who you are. Whether you're good or bad, that's who you are, so you love yourself as you are. And the weird thing is, which I've found so often, if you love a person for who they are, even if they're sort of prisoners and done terrible things in jail, if you love them, they become better human beings. So often when I used to go in jail, they were very dangerous places. So dangerous that sometimes some of the prisoners had nothing to lose. They could rape you. And they looked at someone like me, and just said, oh, you're an obvious target. But I was going inside those jails, and never anything happened to me because the prisoners told me, said, no, we like you, we respect you. You're one of the safest people in this whole jail. If anybody tried anything on you, we'd stop them. And that's sort of, what I got from the prisoners. I just really respected that, respected them. So the self-love is also self-protection. And from the USA, is there a line between blame, fault and accountability? When there's blame, there's very little accountability, because people know that if you're blamed for something, it's usually punished for it. So no one said, it's not my fault, I didn't do it. You try and hide what has been done. That's one of the reasons why, if there was less punishment in this world, less blame, there would be much more accountability. People would actually say when they made a mistake. They would confess it. There'd be no reason why not. And then we can understand why those mistakes happened. You know what it's like in your business? A mistake is made. You hide it because you might get the sack, or even worse, go to jail. Who wants to confess that? Or right now in politics, I don't know who did what. No one knows who did what except the person. But there's so much blame and consequences through bad action, there's hardly any forgiveness at all. I often think, what would have happened if somebody in politics made a mistake? And then they said, I'm sorry, I did make that mistake, please forgive me. Have you ever seen a politician ask forgiveness? It'd be wonderful if they did. They say, we're human beings, we tried our best, but we got the figures wrong, or we were in a rush. I'm sorry, I made a mistake. And really mean it. Has it ever happened? Who did it? Yeah. Okay. Yeah, it's great if they do that more often. Then what I'm saying is they're humans. They're like us. Of course, you know, that I'm the abbot, so I never make mistakes, do I, Ajahn Brahm? Of course I do. And lots of mistakes. But anyway, you try your very best. From New Delhi here. Dear Ajahn, could you suggest a meditation technique or practice to cultivate the Brahma Viharas and default to these emotions more? You know, one of those Brahma Viharas, which, you know, metta, a lot of people do, but I remember this, one of the monks was teaching mudita. Mudita is like sympathetic joy. You see that someone does something really well and you just celebrate with them. You know, instead of saying there's a football match, say, and somebody wins and somebody loses, instead of the losers, you know, getting all sort of upset, why not celebrate with them? Doesn't matter who wins, but you celebrate with the winner. Why not? But a lot of times that we always think we lost and we feel hurt that somebody else won. Mudita is we celebrate with all the winners in the world. Anyone who has a wonderful experience, well done. Anyone who recovers from cancer, yeah, even though you're dying of cancer. The mudita just allows you to have this great joy which is free and is always there. Why do we always get depressed when other people do it tough or do it hard? Can't we celebrate when people just have good experiences in life? And that type of happiness is free. I better be quick on this last question. Again, from the New Delhi, I did answer that very deeply because I'm running out of time. Okay, from Indonesia. Currently I'm 21 and facing difficulty about the urge of masturbation. Is there any advice? Ajahn, thank you. And what should you do? Is usually say, just do it. It's nature. If you're a monk, you're not supposed to do that. You get into trouble for that. But if you're a lay person, and again, there's nothing really wrong with that. It's part of your male nature. So, but later on, nice to have a partner. So, you know, you don't feel so much. I hope it's, and I can't really say the name, otherwise you know who it is. I'm not quite sure if it's a male or female. But anyway, it's just nature. Don't feel guilty about things like that. I hope I got that one right. Sometimes I make mistakes too. If I got it wrong, please I ask forgiveness. Okay, so we can finish off now. Thank you again for staying here. Now what do we do at the end of the talk? Sadhu, sadhu, sadhu. Hey, where are you going? Yeah, about to put it in there, yeah. Okay. So thank you for all the questions.